Hi family, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. I'm OYOKO, but you could call me V. And today I am in Amsterdam. Very happy to have my friend next to me sitting here because we're going to have a sacred discussion. We're going to talk about art and how it influences us and how we view ourselves, yada yada. But before we do that, would you like to introduce yourself? Gabriel Oriel Wamba. That's his full name. You can look him up. He does many, many things, but I will hand the mic to you.
Hi, thank you for welcoming me. How would you like me to call you? By which of your aliases?
Oh yeah, I do have many names too. You can just say Oyoko.
Okay, so I will call you Oyoko today.
Today.
Yeah, today. Well, welcome. Thank you for inviting me today here in Amsterdam. Thank you for coming over to the Netherlands. That's as well. You should visit us more.
Yeah, it's been a while.
You should visit us more. It should be nice. So I'm Gabriel Oriel Wamba. I work in different fields. I'm a student, psychology student, and a philosophy student. I am more of a philosopher than of a psychologist, and I work in the music industry and as well in the art industry. And I also have other activities that are not so relevant for today. So I think that's the shortest introduction I can give about myself.
We are also sharing one tiny mic, because we are, moving around in Amsterdam. So this is the best that I can do. So please forgive me if the sound quality is not top notch today, but it is what it is. Take it or leave it. But yeah, let's start with the first question. So what I wanted to ask you first is, how do you define art? I know it's a very profound question, but try to keep it concise if that's possible. If that's even a possibility, I know. But okay, just give your answer. Like, how do you define art?
How I define art? Okay, I think that's a different question than the question I thought that was coming up.
But that was gonna be. This is the intro.
This is the intro question. How
And
I
then-
define art.
Yeah.
I think how I define art. Art as an. I think there would be several possibilities, and I will probably choose the one that's in the dictionary.
Okay, which is?
I should look it up. So
I will put the actual definition of what art means according to Cambridge dictionary, whatever dictionary I can find. I will put it in the frame, so you know what art means. But what is your definition?
my definition of art, that will probably be something that I probably would like to write this more than to speak about it just out of the blue, because it's a pretty abstract question
I know.
on what my perspective of art is. But I think the the safest or the first thing that will come up to mind to me is an expression form. So art will probably be for me. Art always is an expression form, and that can be anything as long as the person has the intention of making art. So I think the intention for me will be the most important part if something is art, or what would define art.
Okay. Okay. Does art, as you just described, influence us and how we view ourselves?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I think that art is.
I feel like this is a whole interview.
Yeah, I think that art really does influence the way we view ourselves, but especially can influence the way how we can view ourselves, especially from a psychology perspective. Being a person who dug into certain parts of art therapy and what the therapeutical effect can be of making art or experiencing art, but especially making art. I think that art is really one of the ways we have as humankind to to apply a certain form of influence on ourselves and to reshape or shape the way we think or the way we think about ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
So positive and negative. So positive and negative.
I think positive and negative, if it can influence us positive and negative.
Yeah.
Of course, but I don't think that applying negative influence through art is something bad. I think if the person really have the intention to make something with a bad vibe, then that is their choice, and I think that's artistical freedom. And I think it depends on how you see it and how you define what is art, and if you make a distinction between, for example, art and smart. It sounds
Smart?
Yeah, it sounds a bit weird, but let's put the S between. Just put an S in front, and we change art and smart. Maybe some people are just a bit smarter, or do something in a different way. But I don't think that applying negative. I don't think that making something negative is something bad. So.
Do you think that making something negative is how others perceive the art? That's what it's revealing or triggering them to see it in that way? Or do you think that the art is intentionally creating negative art or something that contains negative energy is in both ways okay? Does that make sense? And the question?
It can be maybe somebody has a really negative emotion. So if somebody has a really negative emotion, and if this person's make negative art, then maybe it can be a relief. It's up to the viewer to maybe change their perspective on why they would not look at something negative. Maybe it can help other people understand other people. And I think that making something that is negative can show us a side of society that is maybe not so positive. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Do you think that people want to imitate art? Let's say like we are watching a movie and everything is going really well. The main character is going through some turbulence. There's like some ups and downs, but then eventually they have a really happy ending in a non-sexual way, obviously. I mean, it's not obvious, but you know what I mean. If what the main character is experiencing and they have a happy ending, but that's not what our life is, because some people see art as it's a reflection of reality. But if that's not your reality, if everything is really shit in your life, then do you think that art that we consume is essentially driving us to imitate it?
I think our society and the way we like to perceive things is a lot of times based on cliches. So I don't think that the cliche in art is a bad thing, but it's just something we are looking for sometimes, or some people are looking for. So it doesn't have to be a bad thing, and everybody has his own. But I think it's important to make a distinction between what is art and what is not art, and and starting by it probably starts by looking at romanticism, or looking at why we romanticize things and how we did it in history and why humans do it, and what the reason is behind that. Maybe getting rid first of your own way of romanticizing certain things that shouldn't be, or so I think that thinking about something has to be learned, but I don't think that learning this has always to be done in a school environment. So I think that there's not, for example, with things as philosophy, or so I don't think that you always have to have an academical background to to be that person or to have that type of thinking. So
What do you mean? What do you mean by you thinking needs to be learned?
I think that there's a certain. I think that you have to spend. It starts by spending hours on something. For example, if you want to understand art, you would be needing to have a lot of leisure time. Otherwise, it probably will not work. So it starts by understanding that it costs time. Understanding something, you have to have a certain amount of hours you have to spend on something, on certain things to understand it. And for art to make it work, in most cases, you have to have a certain amount of leisure in your life, or you have to have the possibility to apply that in your life to make sure that you. But if you have that possibility, I think that a lot of people are able to learn that, or to. And I don't say that my way is the best way or is the way, but it will probably start with that. And so it will be starting by needing to free time, to free some time, or to have the time to actually understand it. And I think if people have the time, then for a lot of people, it's so it mainly has to do with how many time you spend on something. Yeah.
How much time you spend on something?
How much time you spend on something. Yeah.
That will dictate.
Probably how if you can think about it. Thinking costs time, and you will be needing to. For me, in art, you have to have a certain level of. I would rather not use this word, but you will have to have a certain juxtaposition to actually compare things and to understand what the difference is. So you will be needing to have seen a lot of art before you
Can produce art, you mean?
no, not produce, but maybe to have an actual opinion.
Okay.
So for me, it always starts by I'm still learning, so I'm forever. For me, it's really about positioning myself as well as a student and somebody who's still learning.
That's quite interesting, because if you need to consume art in order to understand and witness art when you see it, or when when you are exposed to it, then I mean all of that is very subjective, because everyone has a different definition of what art is. So yeah, I don't even know where I'm going with this question, so let's just go to the next one. Can the artist become its art, or is it more like an extension of the artists themselves in a way? Or is the artist itself, is the artist art, or is it the thing that it's producing, the creation, the production of it, if that only in itself is art, not the actual being that's producing it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but I think that
Are you okay?
I'm okay. I'm sorry, but I think from an art theory perspective, that for things like that, we'll start by making a difference between different sorts of art. And for example, somebody who has a ritual art background. You know what I mean by that?
No.
Okay. So, for example, you have different types of making art, but I think if people, for example, have ritual art, can be people who have certain rituals in their art. And it can be a bit more. Certain people have a extremer way of doing that. Can be a way of expressing themselves. It as well can be something from their cultural background or rituals they invent themselves. But I think if somebody does something like that, chances are way higher than somebody really becomes the art.
Wait, do you mean like that they have a ritual that they perform before creating, or that's part of their production process?
No, that's for example, if they have a live performance, where the live performance is more ritualistic, that chances are higher that the person. But this person as well can be an actor, so it's a bit to demystify that. It's a bit harsh, but the person as well can be a professional actor. But if the person maybe is not, then
Because you could say that acting is the art, the art that they are creating. It's not them. They are just molding themselves into this character, and that the performance of that, the performance is the art, not them doing it, if that makes sense, unless you would suggest that them being able to transform themselves in such ways that they are completely unrecognizable of themselves, that is art, then that could be maybe a discussion point. I don't know if that makes sense, because I mean, in that case, it wouldn't mean that they themselves are art, right? Because they are just themselves until they read the script and perform.
I think so, but I think there are also people who really turn themselves into the art piece, but that's a choice. But if people really can become their art, I think that people really can become one with their art. But there is also a part where people have to be themselves, and I hope that not everybody has to be their art. So, well, in certain cases, I think that some people really are their art, and that can as well be something authentic. So I don't think it's something good or bad. I think that it's really hard to really say this is this or this is that in this situation, and if it's bad or wrong, if somebody becomes art or his art piece.
Okay. This brings me to my next question. Can you, or can we, shall I say, separate the artist from their art? Or is it like them, as I said before, like an extension of themselves? So if there's something wrong with the art itself, then there's something wrong with the artist. If there's something wrong with the artist, or if there's something very unlikable or something controversial with the artist, does that mean that we cannot condone the art that they have produced? Or is that is it inseparable? That's basically what I'm asking. Or can we see the difference? Like, oh no, the art is like something completely different. You cannot condemn someone based on what they've done in their private life, and by taking away their art in like museums and stuff.
That's a really actual topic. So it's something that is really going on right now. And understanding art starts by, understanding a character or a person will probably start by understanding the person, and there are certain things that have to be seen in time perspective. So I think that's really important. So you have a part that has to be seen in a certain time perspective. So that has the cultural norms and the actual social norms of that time. So you cannot compare it to what happens now. But there are also people that are now getting banned out of museums or places for their life story. Because of what they did and about what they did, and that certain things they did are really in things we understand now are not that we cannot really perceive as something ethical to look at, maybe as something for educational purpose to understand certain things. But there are really artists right now that are getting that museums are not portraying or showing anymore because of their life story. And I think if you really want to understand art, you first have to art or philosophy or a certain character, you will have to look into this person's life to understand what this person is doing or what this person is portraying. Yeah.
Do you have an example of like an artist that has now been banned for their life story because their life story was their art practice?
I am not going to name drop anybody.
Okay.
Because there are probably still people, discussions going on, and
do you think that there is a honest representation of our society in visual arts?
I think we can learn a lot in visual arts about our society, but it as well has to do with how you look at it, and that as well starts with understanding time perspective or what you're doing. So, for example, if you go to a museum with classical art, it's a place you visit to become white, to become a Western or European person, to understand something about your history. So,
wait, say that again. What do you mean by that?
It means it has to. You have to start by understanding what you're looking at and what the information is you're trying to grasp. But by doing this, you can as well see a lot of different topics and how people have been portrayed. But it starts by understanding which areas you're looking at and what you're doing. For example, when you visit a museum, like when I go to a museum, what am I doing? Like when you go to a museum, you're not. You're learning something about a certain part of society. So if you go to a classical
in a certain way, though.
In a certain way. So for example, if you go to a museum, you're going somewhere where people are going to learn you something about Western European culture here, for example. So it probably starts by understanding what you're doing with that art. So every place that portrays art or something is going to give you something where you can or identify yourself with or learn something or become something. So it as well fits with the first question you was asking. So it helps you to become something or to learn something about
What do you mean by becoming something? What is it that you're, if you can elaborate on that? Another thing that I read recently is that museums and like archives really are crime scenes, really, because most of the stuff that you'll be seeing and that you want to learn about are artifacts that are, looted and like taken away from like different countries, and so you go in there and you just walk into a beautifully curated crime scene that no one really wants to challenge in a way. And if you do, then we know that art is political, so walking into a museum wanting to challenge the institution it's really hard to do that on your own. And if you have a collective, then maybe you could make some changes, but inherently the institution is the problem, because these artifacts are there for not for some reason. We all know the reason, but so for you to say that you going to a space like that to become, what does that even mean?
I think.
I mean, those are two questions in one, but yeah.
So I will start by the first question, and that was about looted art and artifacts,
yeah.
So, yeah, for looted art, I don't know. Go dig into Second World War. Probably there's a lot of going on, and there's a lot with Nazi looted art, and the Dutch government, for example, just paid a lot of money to get Nazi looted art back, and
Oh, really?
yeah, so it's not just, it has to, you have to look at different art, different time places, and this is probably one of the most recent. You can go back to a different other times in history, but one of the easiest ways probably to look at Nazi looted art, and to look at what happened in the Second World War with art, and how much time it costs to still get these artifacts back. But that is more something for different institutes. For me, as I am not a university or a museum, so that's not that's a topic that is not reserved for me. It's something I can spread information about, but really the research part of it is not something that is my lane.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the becoming part, as in you go
The
to a
becoming
museum
part,
to
yes.
go
I
to
think a lot of people are looking for their own identity, and I think that a lot of people look for their identity in art, in certain art forms they can identify with, or they can understand something. So I think people look at art to understand something about another culture or about their own culture, and so they try to become in this search to become who they are and their own identity. In the search for their own identity, they can use art to understand their own history, and for example, what went wrong, or what did not went wrong, and and for that part, I think for me it's always important to see certain things in a time perspective, and to understand the time perspective.
Would you say that artists that are unaware of them being artists are being awakened in a space like that? So, as you said, people searching for their identity or trying to understand their cultural background or whatever it is that they are searching for, stepping into a space like that, in most cases are very, very whitewashed. Where whiteness is centered as I don't know if pinnacle is the right word, but more like whiteness is taking up so much space that anything that is different or deviant from that has this like little exposure. Would you say that going there is awakening the artist that is unaware of them being the artist? Because if you say you're going there to find your identity, to understand your identity or the roots of it, and if you're not aware of you being the artist, that could maybe trigger you, like being exposed to such art.
What do you mean by you not understanding that you are the artist? Who is?
Maybe you are, like, because you do have people like, oh, I'm not creative. Oh, I don't know. I can never do that, or all these things. But maybe deep down they are an artist, but they just haven't tapped into that energy or that side of them. So for them to go to a space like that and being like exposed to beautiful work, maybe by their ancestors, and being inspired by that, has maybe awakened or unlocked that artist's self in them.
I think so. I think
I don't know if that was an actual question.
yeah, but I can tap into that. So I think that what you're looking for is if art institutes or places that exhibit art can awaken people's creativity.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe
okay.
that's a very simplified.
Yes, of course. You first have to encounter something before you know it exists.
Hmm.
So definitely, and for example, what I do with my socials is trying to deliver every day something on the internet that has some kind of historical or to keep feeding some certain places for people that maybe need it, or people that are making art, to keep feeding them certain information, or paintings, or historical stories, or things they never encountered, or I as well try to update enough information and to hand over free books if that's possible, free information for artists, just to make sure that people have the resources to do something. For example,
So you did it to inspire them, basically.
yes, or to make sure that people can have certain resources if they don't have it. But I think certain institutes have a better have a different position. For me, it's just I do that as because it's my duty is maybe a bit of a weird word, but it's the least I can do to give something back.
Where do you feel the need to give something back? From where's that urge coming from?
Because I'm as well receiving something. So for me, if I receive something, then the next step for me will be to have a look at what can I do back. And
you're receiving something from art.
I'm receiving something from art or from people. So what is the balance I can give to give something back? And for me, it is as well. I think that's an important thing to do. What is the balance? Yeah.
Maybe as a final question, do you think that cultural archives, maybe not cultural archives, but just like art institutions are the places to go if you want to immerse yourself in like what art is and what it should be, or is it more you can do it from home? Yeah, basically that you can do it from home and immerse yourself right there and then, or do you have to go to these spaces, these art institutions, to get proper art in education or like something?
Yeah, I understand what you're trying to say. If you, it depends what you want to do. So it depends on what your end goal is. For example, if you just want to learn something about art, then get a tour in a museum or something. But if you really want to dig into certain art pieces, a computer screen, or having something to look at digital, or a book, will probably make it way easier to understand an art piece. Or because a few years ago we didn't have the internet in a way it is now. So if you want to observe something, if you have an if you want to understand an art piece or something, going to a museum, they will have certain things to help you with. But if you really want to, it probably will go better. It probably go way faster on a computer screen, or if you just buy a book about it. Because there will be people having more as enough information to hand you over. But then the cultural archives will be the places. So the places where you can look at something without having the big art piece, but where you can just observe something and read books or essays or opinions of curators or art critics about something. So I would. So it really depends on what your goal is, and if you want to dig deeper into art, then keep funding the museums and keep visiting museums to see something you want to see.
You should fund the museums.
Not fund, but keep visiting them and keep.
Because you don't think it's a fractured presentation.
No, I think it's.
Because it's obviously presented in a way that
yes,
is
but
benefiting these institutions,
even
using artifacts that do not belong to them. If anyone can hear me, that do not belong to them. So to actively fund and support institutions, not to say that they're doing. No, wait. Let me think about this. I'm not saying like we need to, get rid of museums that are promoting artifacts and like the stories of other cultures, but it is, it's art that does not belong to them, so in order to it needs to be maintained and it needs funding. Obviously in many cases the government is funding these institutions, but to say that we need to keep maintaining these spaces, I think there needs to be a change in how we preserve art. And if the art belongs to different countries, it needs to be returned, and maybe a different way of consuming art could be a way where you can understand the history of, like, let's say with the Dutch Empire and the art that they are showing now in their museums. If there's a link, which there certainly is, then maybe there's a different way of showing that and learning about the history of the artifacts and the architecture or whatever, But to say that only fund the museums, I don't know if I agree with that. I think I disagree with like really focusing on museums only, or like really funding these museums, because it's just upholding the institution that has done heinous crimes, or not maybe the museum itself, but they heinous crimes have been involved in order for them to keep doing what they're doing.
I think thank you for your question. I think it's a really interesting topic, but I think that people need to learn from their history, but don't have to be ashamed of their history. History is history, and you have to learn from certain things, and you have to see it in a time perspective. But I don't think that people have to be feeling certain shame or guilt for things they probably would never participate in with the knowledge they have now. For looted art, I think it has to go back, if it can go back. And I think that a lot of countries are right now investing in taking the art back, and there are as well a lot of people that have
because the countries that it's because they are demanding it's because they are demanding their art,
Yes.
It's not like they are, like, let's say with the British Museum, there's so much art that does not belong to Britain.
Yes.
There's literally, it's stolen, and now countries are demanding for for that art to be returned. But it's not like the British Museum is saying, oh, let's return all the stuff that we have stolen. It's because there is so much pressure on them for them to return the stolen artifacts.
So yes, but that's so it means that people are doing this. So if people keep applying this pressure, it means that people want to have a certain justice. And but I think that countries right now, especially European countries, are really digging into this and taking their responsibility on putting artifacts back in places where they belong. And so you have these people, and you have as well the collectors. So, but that is a different. That's a different thing, So that's a different. group of people, and it's important to understand which art you can keep absorbing, because looking at art you cannot afford looking at is always a bit difficult, because then it's not so healthy. For example, you have an art collector with a Congolese background. That is really known person for buying art and bringing it back to a place, or collecting it and making sure that it goes back to, for example, the African continent. So that's as well, with money, it's as well a part. So you have countries that do that, but it's also a task for, I think, the people that have a certain amount of wealth in a country that can afford to buy things back, that they should just buy it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I want to end it here before we dissect any more things. No, I think I'm going to end it here. And yeah, thank you for your time. Usually I want to make these discussions or like conversations longer, but we are in a public space. We are actually, what was this called? Look like a restaurant, like a cafe kind of thing. And it's been hard to find a place where we could like record in peace. So yeah, I think I'm going to end it here. Maybe we will continue the conversation another day, and maybe with some other stuff, other topics. But yeah, thank you for watching anyway. And do you have any final thoughts? Do you want to say anything? Last I don't know, messages that you want to share? Is there any? Do you have anything else that you want to say?
Yeah, I think with what I want to add, what I just said, looking at art you cannot afford, it's about art that you want to buy. So I want to finish with, if you want to participate in keeping the art industry a healthy place, then make it.
So it's so you are very very well aware that it's an unhealthy space.
No, it
or
doesn't
place.
have to be, but participate in it. It starts by by having a certain motivation to understand things and to buy art. So if you have, it doesn't have to be that expensive. There are a lot of things going on right now.
Yeah.
It can be not that expensive, but if you have if you want to participate in a certain way that is not visiting a museum, then just get out there and get to know artists, talk to them, visit some galleries, visit some expositions, visit some schools, and just be out there supporting students and people that are that need the money. So if you have some spare money, or if you want to participate in it, just go out there and buy art. And for people that don't have the possibility to go out there and buy art, there's now as well even digital art you can buy. That has a different starting perspective, that you can start with for like $10. You can probably buy a digital piece of art. So I think it really starts by digging into it, reading some books, buying books, and buying some art. So just go out there. It's, yeah.
This actually reminded me of something else. The perception, at least when I started to get into art and trying to understand it, at first it was so far away from me. Like, the perception that I had of art was people from very privileged backgrounds had access to art, and this included, going to the museums, because not everyone can afford going to a museum. Not everyone can afford to go and support an artist. So it felt like something that was just so far away from me, that it felt a bit awful. Like, it felt a bit difficult for me to even enter a space or a scene where art was the main, where art was on the center stage, because it was so foreign to me. But yeah, you did mention like loads of things that people can do if they want to start understanding art, and how they can be more involved, and how they can use art to understand themselves in a way. So yeah, I think that's just something that I wanted to, it was more like a comment, it wasn't like a question or anything. But yeah, it just reminded me of that. When I started, art was so foreign to me until I went to an arts university, and then it felt so accessible, kind of.
Yeah, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So you went to an art university, and what do you perceive as the difference between how you perceive art and how people who didn't went to an art university perceive art?
The difference between how I see art and how others see art.
Is there? Do you think that there's an actual difference? Do you think that people can have the same? Do you think that you experience art in a different way that people than people that didn't went to art university? Do you think that people that, so for example, do people that did not went to an art university, can they understand art the same way as you do? Yeah.
Yes, I do think people can understand and see and absorb art the way that I do. Obviously, it's a very personal experience. But before going to the art university that I graduated from, it felt very elite. It was more like elitism, like people just from a certain background and class, middle upper class, were the ones that knew everything about art. Like, it wasn't really something that was a topic that I would be discussing at home. It was very, passed aside, like, oh, don't do art, it's too abstract, you cannot make money from that. Only white people do that. I'll be very frank with you, that's really how, in the communities that I grew up in, that was something that white people did. It's not like a black person, what are you going to do with art, so it felt very like elitism, like it's very far away from me. It's something that is not supposed to be something I should be thinking about in a way. And I think it's just reinforced in the communities that you live in. Like, if you have I come from a West African upbringing, West African community. Art is something that we don't do, and obviously there are artists in West Africa and just like in the diaspora, but it was very frowned upon in a way. Like, you should not be doing art, you should be doing something that other people are doing, so we know that there is money coming in, like it's guaranteed. So yeah, that's more. But I don't see a difference. That was the initial answer. I don't see a difference in people that didn't go to art school or art academies or universities and people that do. Like, you can both see art when it's presented to you. So it's really a personal experience. But yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Okay,
Yeah,
that's it. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, same for you then, right? What do you think? Because you went to a few like schools.
I think the same. I think it's like I said, it's you have to have a certain motivation to understand things, and to have to be able to be humble enough to accept that you don't understand something, and that you don't know something, and that you need other people or to help you through that. So I think it starts with humbling yourself, and it always starts by accepting that that you don't know something, and that the answers are not magically going to appear. So for that you will be needing the right people. So you will be needing to surround yourself with the right people to build the right network. Because the network will be really important, because the information you get has to be credible. You get the right places, right information, and so I think that is really important.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to end with that, I do believe that, you know, if you're an artist, you're an artist. Like, not going to an art academy or university, that doesn't necessarily give you that, you know, check mark. Like, okay, you're an artist now. Like, you've been that. It's not like you going to university has suddenly changed you into this great artist that still needs to, you know, blossom. Like, you've been that, and you maybe what's the right word, you are now aware of it. That could help. I think it made me more aware of, oh, I am an artist. I do think in a creative way, and I like to do these things, and I look at things in a different way, and then trying to see how I can mold that into something else. So I think it's a practice, it's a lifestyle, it's something that's always present. When you're not creating, you're still an artist. When you're not writing, you're still a writer. When you're what else? When you're not dancing, you're still a dancer. Like, it's you are. I don't think it's just a title. It's just you. It's your being, in a way. You're a creative being, creative mind, and no institution or no practice can give you that stamp of approval, you know. There's no check mark or anything like that.
Yeah,
We will never end this video, sorry.
no, never mind. But I think that's a good thing. If we can keep discussing about things. I read an article last week about how two psychoanalysts, when they first met each other, talked for 13 hours.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so
Two psychoanalysts
sat down and had a conversation for 13 hours. So 13 hours. So I think if something really interests you, then having a conversation for 12, 13 hours should be okay.
We don't have that much time, you know that.
No, but yeah, so having a conversation with somebody about something, it's really important. So having the right feedback at the right time, and connect with the right people, and listen to the right people at the right time. And to add something on what you just said, the first part I added was more about the theoretical side of things, just more about curation and about art theory and about understanding art, things like that. But the practical side, for me as a psychology student, all these art forms you just named, so writing, dancing, painting, have or can have a therapeutic aspect. And I think for these aspects, it's not needed. It's not always needed to have a certain understanding of something. So if you want to dance, just dance. Yeah. If you want to paint, just make a painting. If you want to write something, just write something. Only the activity writing itself is going to have a therapeutical therapeutical effect. So if you are in a certain situation where you need help for mental health, go get help. That's the first one. But if you're looking for a way to do something, then just for example, you can start by making art. So writing or painting or dancing. So don't let other if you're not looking at the theoretical part, but if you just want to make art, then just make art, and things will as well come to you with doing it, and spend time doing it, time understanding it. And there is a lot that you can learn from just making art, even if you don't understand it. So that there is no starting point, starting credential. The starting point should just be buying a paintbrush and a canvas or something. Yeah.
One last thing.
Yes.
This reminds me of abstract writing. No, wait. Was it called script? No, it's a script writing. Automatic writing.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean by
What is your, so the subconscious?
exactly?
Yeah,
Just like writing it off, and then eventually you just write straight from your subconscious mind.
I from writing for you, that's something that is really really nice to do. And for example, when I visit my parents,
Mm.
there is I think it's going to move, but there is a painting hanging
Mm-hmm.
from my mother that is as well into more intuitive art forms. She gives classes in primitive expression, so it's a therapeutical dance form.
Okay.
That is a dance form that is closer to yourself. But there's a painting of her hanging that is an intuitive painting. So that is just
That she made.
She made somewhere at a workshop or an art class, and it's just a painting that is that is just something subconscious, and yeah.
That's really cool. Okay. Well, I think we should end it here. So, yeah, thank you so much for being here with me and having this conversation. Do you want to say your name or where people can find you? Or I'm going to put everything in the description anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of things are still in starting process. The things in art that I want, you can follow me on Instagram. So that's Gabriel Oriel. So it's Gabriel_Oriel_ for daily art. It's just some daily art, but you can always buy a painting or something. If you want to buy something, you're interested, just send me an email. There's also stuff that's not on my website. If you're on Facebook, you can as well just like the page for some daily art news. So that's a place where there's more and some free books as well. So there's weekly some free books that I add over there, some information. So there's a lot. If you want to get into art, I share a lot of places where you can start or where you can get the right information. And I have something as well for people that are not looking for a more classical that are not really looking for a classical background in art. I have a new project coming up that has a certain delay with COVID-19. That's as well Gabriel Oriel, but that's Gabriel Oriel Streetwise, and that's going to be with artists that don't have an actual art school background. So it's going to be aimed at street art and street artists, people that made their name on the streets, that made their name by making street art and did everything themselves. So people that have maybe a different way of thinking, but are really worthy of selling, looking at. All of these artists will have will get an interview, and there will be a lot of background information on them, where to find them, and there will as well be art pieces for sale that will be pressed by Gabriel Oriel, but that's going to be Gabriel Oriel Streetwise. So be on the lookout for that, because that is going to be something that is really worth looking at if you're interested in street art and something that is that's a bit different. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Gabriel. And yeah, I'm going to end it here. So I'll put some of his, information in the description, like website and Instagram and stuff. So if you want to go and find him, check the description box and let me know your thoughts. Don't message me. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. What makes an artist an artist? If you think that we as members of society want to imitate art, or if you could separate the art from the artist. These are all things that we think about, that we briefly discussed. I hope it wasn't too dense, but yeah, that this is just a very short conversation, really. But thank you so much. Oh,
If I
something?
can add a certain part.
Yeah.
Yeah, it starts by asking questions about things, and I'm maybe not always the right person, but maybe I know the right person. So if you have any questions or if you're looking for something, just send me a message, and if needed, we can just zoom it up or whatever, you know. So just send me a message, an email, and if I'm not the right person, then I probably could send you in the right direction or to the right person. So yeah.
As you can see, he really excels in self-promotion. Yeah, you do that excellently. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and yeah, I hope to see you in the next one. So I hope you are well, I hope you go well, I hope you stay well, and I will see you in the next video. Deuces.
Bye.